The rain hammered against the windows of the old community center as Maya sat in the back row, invisible as always. She watched the town council members argue about the highway expansion project, their voices rising above the storm outside. For 3 years, she'd been coming to these meetings, raising her hand to speak about the wetlands they were destroying, the habitat they were erasing. And for 3 years, they'd dismissed her with the same patronizing smile. "Does anyone have any real concerns?" Councilman Barrett asked, his eyes sweeping past Maya as if she were part of the furniture. Maya stood up anyway, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "The construction is threatening the water table. If you continue—" "Miss Chen," Barrett interrupted, barely glancing her way. "We've heard your conspiracy theories before. Unless you have actual credentials, perhaps you should let the experts handle this." Laughter rippled through the room. Maya felt her face flush as she sat back down, gripping her grandfather's old journal against her chest. That night, at 11:32 p.m., Maya sat in her small apartment above the hardware store, the journal open before her. Her grandfather had been a civil engineer, one of the best, before he'd retired to this small town. His notes about the underground aquifer system were meticulous, terrifying. The construction wasn't just threatening the water supply. It was headed straight toward a massive underground cavity that would collapse under the weight of the highway. The entire eastern side of town would sink. She'd tried official channels. She'd sent reports to the state environmental agency, contacted journalists, even hired a lawyer with money she didn't have. Nothing had worked. Barrett and his brother-in-law owned the construction company. They'd greased every palm that mattered. Maya's phone buzzed. It was a text from her neighbor, old Mr. Peterson. "They're starting the foundation pour at 5 a.m. tomorrow. Saw the concrete trucks rolling in." Her heart sank. Once they poured that foundation, it would be over. The point of no return. She looked at the photo on her desk. Her grandfather standing beside his pride and joy. A restored Sherman tank from World War II. He'd spent 20 years bringing it back to life, making it operational. When he died, he'd left it to Maya, along with everything else. The tank sat now in a warehouse on the edge of town, a monument to his passion for history and engineering. An impossible idea formed in her mind. At 4:17 a.m., Maya stood in the warehouse, staring up at the 30-ton beast. She'd learned to drive it years ago, her grandfather teaching her the controls during summer visits. "A woman who can command a tank," he'd said with a twinkle in his eye, "can command anything." Her hands shook as she climbed into the commander's hatch. The engine roared to life, the sound echoing off the metal walls. This was insane. This would probably end with her in jail. But if she did nothing, people would die when that ground gave way. The tank rumbled through the pre-dawn streets, its treads sparking against the asphalt. Maya's heart hammered in her chest as she navigated toward the construction site. She'd studied the layout obsessively. The foundation forms were set up right over the weakest point of the cavity. At 5:03 a.m., the first construction workers arrived to find a World War II tank positioned directly in the center of their site, engine idling. Maya sat in the commander's hatch, her grandfather's journal held high. "What the hell?" The foreman grabbed his radio. "We've got a situation here. Some crazy woman in a tank." Within minutes, police cars surrounded the site, their lights painting the morning red and blue. Maya's stomach churned, but she held her ground. Literally, Maya Chen. Officer Rodriguez's voice boomed through a megaphone. She'd gone to school with his daughter. "Come out of there right now!" "I can't let them pour this foundation," Maya shouted back. "The ground isn't stable. The whole eastern neighborhood will collapse." "She's lost it," someone muttered. But then Maya saw Sarah Williams pushing through the crowd, the newspaper editor who'd ignored her emails. "Wait," Sarah called out. "Let her speak." "The cavity system runs directly under this site," Maya explained, her voice carrying across the crowd that had begun to gather. "My grandfather mapped it 30 years ago. I have his engineering reports, soil samples, everything. If they pour 30 tons of concrete here, it'll trigger a collapse within months." "That's ridiculous," Barrett's voice rang out as he arrived in his expensive SUV. "We had geological surveys done." "By your brother-in-law's company," Maya shot back. "I have independent analysis right here." But you wouldn't look at it. None of you would listen to a nobody. You're making a scene over nothing, Barrett sneered. Officers, arrest her. Actually, a new voice interrupted. An older man in a state environmental agency jacket stepped forward. I'd like to see those documents. Maya's heart leaped. Dr. Marcus Okoye, she'd sent him reports months ago. You came? Got your latest email at 2 a.m., he said, climbing up to the tank. Figured if you were desperate enough to threaten this, I should take a look. He studied her grandfather's journal, his expression growing grave. He pulled out a handheld ground-penetrating radar device and walked the site, his frown deepening with each reading. The sun was fully up now, and news vans had arrived. Maya watched Barrett's face turn purple as Dr. Okoye made calls. Demanded core samples. Ordered work stopped. At 9:45 a.m., Dr. Okoye addressed the crowd that had swelled to over 200 people. Miss Chen is correct. This entire foundation plan is catastrophically flawed. There's a limestone cavity the size of a house directly beneath this site. Had they proceeded, we would have seen structural failure within 6 months. Potentially dozens of casualties. The crowd erupted. Barrett tried to slink away but found his path blocked by angry neighbors whose homes would have been destroyed. Why didn't anyone listen to her? Someone shouted. Sarah Williams stepped forward, her camera crew filming. Because we assumed someone young, someone without the right credentials, someone we could dismiss as a nobody, couldn't possibly know better than the powerful men in suits. We failed this town. She saved it. Officer Rodriguez approached the tank, a rueful smile on his face. Maya, I still have to write this up, but I don't think there's a judge in the state who'd convict you. Maya climbed down from the tank, her legs wobbling. The crowd parted, then began to applaud. Mrs. Peterson from the flower shop grabbed her hand. Your grandfather would be so proud. 3 months later, Maya stood before the town council again. But this time, she sat at the table as the newly appointed head of the Environmental Safety Commission. Barrett was under investigation. The highway had been rerouted, and the cavity system her grandfather had discovered was now a protected geological site. Any old business? The interim councilman asked. Maya smiled, thinking of the tank now permanently displayed in the town square, a monument to speaking truth to power. No, she said. I think we're finally ready to move forward. She'd learned something in that tank at dawn. Sometimes being a nobody is exactly what gives you the courage to do what the somebodies won't. And sometimes, all it takes is one person refusing to be invisible to change everything.